So today's webinar is the 2025 Cyber Trends Unveiled, Insights from Alamo ACE. I'm Carla H., Senior Growth Marketing Manager at ElastiFlow, and I'm so glad you're all here. Before we get started, I have a few quick notes. So if you have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section, and we'll answer them at the end. And this session is being recorded, as you heard. And you'll get the recording along with Frank and Nathan's contact details by email in case you have any additional questions or would like to follow up with them. Today we'll explore key cybersecurity trends for 2025 with highlights from Alamo ACE. And at the end, please complete this short survey. It really helps us make these sessions even better. And now I'm excited to introduce our speakers, Nathan Stacy, DoD Solution Architect, Senior Manager at Elastic, and Frank Monastero, Director of Business Development at ElastiFlow. With that, I'll hand it over to Nathan and Frank. Let's dive in.
Hey, Frank.
Hey, Nathan.
This again.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. Good to see you again.
Yeah, you too, man. So Alamo ACE, we want to talk through a couple different topics that have been talked about at the conference, and it's still going on today. But we all know what the last day of a conference is. We all know.
Yeah.
Frank, tell me your thoughts about Alamo ACE. Like, it's why San Antonio? What it means to those who visit it? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think of my times attending, and you got to always talk about the Alamo itself, right? And I don't know if you've visited the actual fort, but it's impressive. And during my last visit here in San Antonio, I actually got to go behind the scenes, meaning it's all roped off. Anyway, it's just impressive to see that, and I think it's also keeps us mindful of what that battle meant, and how it affected, I think, the culture there in Texas. But to go beyond that, it's always great to be down there in the Riverwalk. Obviously, a very Air Force focused conference, anyway, it's a great place to gather and talk. Although it is getting quite large now for the venues that they have.
Yeah, it's getting large. I mean, it's a beautiful location.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting point about the Alamo because, like, cyber and Alamo, there's a lot of similarities. Like, don't let them in. Like, that's
Right.
really the concept.
Right.
It's an interesting perspective. I wonder if they thought that through as they were naming it. It's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So there were a couple interesting topics that were brought up in Alamo ACE, and they're not your usual cyber stuff. We're going to talk a little cyber, but we're also going to talk a little bit outside of the cyber realm, and not just, I mean, we're vendors, right? But the non-vendor. Let's start with a non-vendor topic, which is we have the new warrant officer ranking. Like, the first cadets have now graduated from it. I'm going to share a quote here, and I want your thoughts on this, Frank. So this is General Kazor. He said the service stood up the new warrant officer program very quickly. Secretary Kendall on February 14th said, "Go and do," and in 17 days we're going to graduate 30 top total force warrant officers. She told the airmen. I'm pretty excited, and the time from when we got the go do to when we graduated is 296 days. So in general, who are the applicants that can become a warrant officer? So they need to be active duty, guard, or reserve airmen. You be
Right.
42 years old or younger, been in the service for 5 years, have at least a rank of E5, and are at or moving towards a top secret clearance.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Why is this? They haven't had these since the 60s. The last one retired in the 60s. Why do you think the Air Force is moving toward this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's important to have it. Leadership and having sort of that element. I think it's material that it's 42 and younger, because I think they want that um, the newness, the youth, but with enough experience that it can bridge the gap between the senior officers and those they're recruiting today. And I think it actually does fill a great gap in that regard. And I think, for us in the sort of the technical
Mhm.
jobs that we impact and that we engage with, we've seen that over time. The Air Force was one of the first, and I remember I worked with them a lot 20 years ago, and they really were out in front with IT and networks, and industry certainly noticed that and went in and recruited heavily from the Air Force. So
That I feel
this
like
isn't
is a
a
key right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a very smart move on their part to bring this back, and it's going to help them both attract and retain and lead this group of people that have to be technically sound going forward.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, like enlisted officer, what's the difference? And the enlisted people will say, "I have a job, thank you. Like I actually do work for a living." And whereas the officers, they're the managers. So and so people come up the enlisted, and there's some incredible. Like I just met a couple the last couple of days, unbelievably talented, technical enlisted folk. Uh,
Yes.
they there's not a place for them. And this warrant officer is kind of in between enlisted and in between officer. It's kind of in between. And it gives them
Right.
the ability to keep doing that day job that they love, that passion. And, and the military needs people who can make decisions. Like, well, the American general needs people who can make decisions, and the military is that person. Like by law, if there is a decision that needs to be made, like a tough decision, it's going to be the military. And when we give that technical expertise to a contractor, we have all that technical expertise in the office still, but they don't have the ability to perform an action. And
Yeah.
I think that's key. That's huge to have someone that is that technical and has the ability to perform actions, which I feel like the Air Force has lost. And as we get more and more cyber concerns, we need that ability with someone who knows their stuff and can perform an action within these offices.
Yeah, it's really important, and it reminds me of a couple of different things that are really key here because I was, as you know, down at TechNet Augusta as well, not to take away from ACE, but I reconnected with a person that sort of embodies this exact, I think, ideal that the Air Force is trying to bring about. And he specifically has been in the special forces realms where you find they have this element where that individual
Yes.
has leadership, has the experience, and oh, by the way, they can consume the tech. And I think, this is an effort to fill that gap. And I think it's a wise move. And I think, our military, of course, my opinion is, I think it would show that just from a training perspective, you can't go anywhere better. If you're a young person and you really want to dive into something, and the military has that job for you, there's nowhere better to go on the planet, I think, to start your career in the military and then aim for something like this.
100%. Yeah. Changing gears a little bit, zero trust, microsegmentation, it's a huge vibe happening in the industry right now. Everyone's talking about it. Um, we teased this video with a little bit of a microsegmentation discussion. It was
Right.
pretty short though to kind of showcase talking about this microsegmentation thing. Uh, it's what I'm trying to think of a question specifically to ask you, but tell me your thoughts on microsegmentation. Tell me where the industry is going, what you're seeing in the industry.
Well, it's interesting. I think, we all know the cliche in our world of IT that there are two types of organizations, right? There are those that have been hacked and those that just don't know they've been hacked. So, and really, there's only
That's
those
true.
two, right? And so, I think you've got a graph that you'll share later about kind of drives that point home. But microsegmentation is addressing the ability to still secure the most important assets we have, to create standards for that. And oh, by the way, it aligns with the way certain organizations work in our government with what we call compartmentalization of data, which has been an operational construct. But this is truly a technical construct that can map to that operational construct, such that whether it's your CAC or your PIV we discussed before, can provide the ideal access. The difference being here that you can then control it, you can monitor it, right? Elastic and ElastiFlow help do those kind of things, and ensure that you're kind of watching to make sure those zero trust standards are being adhered to.
I mean, there's the executive order that was brought up, which we're going to talk about later with supply chain, where President Biden requested everyone to be doing zero trust. I think it's by 2025. There's a good, better, best of zero trust, and I think the good is good. I would argue it's what everyone knows they should be doing right now.
Yeah,
That's what good is. But the better, best, bestest, that's when you start connecting all of the use cases, all the individuals who work on different things together to build a better vision of what's happening, as well as more as micro cyber. I think that's where this micro segmentation comes in. Like,
yeah,
we're very good at bulk cyber. Uh, we have a building. Let's make sure everything goes in that building. We know what that stuff is. And that's will always be important.
right,
This is that micro of what's in that building. Well, there are four systems that are going on. We have our email system, and we've got over
right,
here our payroll system, and over here we have our mission system, and making sure that people, those who are allowed to gain access to those, gain access to them, and those that don't, and never trusting anyone just because they got into the building. So,
right. No,
so
that's a
that,
great analogy, Nathan. I think is, you know, in the old days, right? You put a firewall against the internet and called it good. And
yeah,
but once either were allowed access or breached that access, you're in the building, right? And to the point about the two types of organizations. And now microsegmentation gets us to a point where not only can you do that, but maybe as you get on the elevator, there are specific floors. Obviously, that's not that hard either, but microsegmentation goes far, further in that might be a specific folder inside of a file drawer on this floor. And, you can go to those levels, those granular levels, which also leave audit trails, right? And that's sort of the best, right? There may be components within that file that, again, your access, you can't read certain components of that file, but other pieces you can. And we have that, we've had the challenge of this anytime we're doing we've called them coalitions or whatnot with our allies, where there's certain data, and this also addresses that because you can do these things very quickly with technology, and I really think it's going to cause a lot of trust building going forward as well.
I think that's going to be key.
Protection as well as trust building is kind of what I'm trying to say.
I mean, it's gonna be easier when people hear cyber, new cyber, they hear, oh, I lose stuff, and it's going to
Yeah.
be longer to gain access, right? The single sign-on is going to be a big part. I feel like that is another huge component of zero trust is a single sign-on, and anyone who uses it loves it. We've worked with one organization. They they're like, yeah, we totally hiddenly added single sign-on to everything, and nobody complained. Like we added the greatest cyber tool we've ever added, and no one complained. Like I think that is another that's the good part of the future of
Right.
chess as well. So
Yeah. 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 In the old days, again, you lock it down and then no one gets access to it. It's like, that's not workable. Right. So, but that happened. I remember scenarios like that. I'm sure you do too. So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
we're getting far more elegant with the security.
All right, we're moving to supply chain. So the main keynote, there were a couple things that were heavily discussed, supply chain, and then the next one, we'll tease there with nuclear power. But let me share this quote, and I
Sure.
want your thoughts on this, Frank. So it's not a coincidence, and this is from Signal, the magazine, by the way. Uh, who was that? Alamo ACE. It's not a coincidence that the number of cyber attacks against the DoD parallels the increase in software supply chain attacks. According to Gartner, software supply chain attacks are expected to triple by 2025 compared to 2021. Of those incidents, more than half are expected to target federal sectors. To respond to these threats, the Army's Assistant Secretary of Acquisitions, Logistics, and Technology issued a memo mandating that software producers provide software builds of materials for all new software contracts, including commercial off-the-shelf contracts by 2025. In alignment with the Biden administration's executive order, which went through a lot of cyber stuff, this requires software providers working with federal agencies to attest to the security of the software.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts on that? On this?
Yeah. I mean, it's again another monumental shift, really, because again, watching this happen over time, we went from, years ago with mil specs and things like that. And, today we allowed, pure economics to drive where things were done, right? Software is no different in that regard, right? So, now we're really taking control of that supply chain and if you will, from an, almost like a chain of evidence, chain of custody kind of thing. Well, where did this code get produced? By whom did it get produced? Before it goes on to the network. And so we've done a fairly good job with the whole ATO process and the like. But this goes further, right? This goes to ensuring the supply chain has this logic built in from the beginning, which helps companies like Elastic and ElastiFlow because we then know, where the guardrails are and we build to that. So, hopefully that's
Yeah.
helpful. I think it will be.
Yeah, I feel like we have, and as we talk through a lot of these things, we're able to do the cyber because the technologies are finally there. And I think that's a big, huge element here. 20 years ago, truly doing supply chain of your software would be really hard. Now, there was less code being developed offshore, so that made it a little bit easier. But if someone was onshore, you had no way of there was no way to really look at the code. There was
Right.
no way to know who wrote what in the code. Uh, Today we have GitHub, or GitLab, or Git, just Git, the concept of Git,
Yeah.
and that allows us to whenever there's code that's written, you know exactly who wrote that code. So
Right.
let's say, going back to 20 years ago, let's say you had someone in your company who was doing nefarious things. You'd have no idea what they touched. Fast forward to today, you'd say, oh, that individual is doing nefarious stuff. This is exactly the things that they wrote. Let's look through each of those things and make sure that it's good. Or what code was written offshore. We're
Yeah.
gonna we're gonna evaluate that significantly more than code that was written onshore. So there's those elements which are significantly better. We have that ability now that we didn't have. We didn't have that before.
That's right. I mean, and it's really kind of thanks to whether it's OS type efforts around like Linux, or products again like Elastic or ElastiFlow, where they're on, out there in GitHub, or, those whole constructs, we got pretty good at, and recognizing which we can trust and which we can't. And I think a lot of that's been adopted on top of the fact that, our government has been testing software before putting it on their network. It was sort of like,
Yes.
used to be ready, fire, aim. And now it's not, so I think they've learned the lesson.
I'm going to share my screen here, and I
Great.
want to like we're talking in general, but I want to talk about a very specific issue that occurred, which was Log4j,
Yeah.
and walk through how it affected the entire industry. Why this is a huge thing, and we're all happy that the Army is moving forward with this. Frank, can you see my screen right now?
Yes. Yeah, I
Awesome.
can.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it into slide mode here.
Yeah.
So Log4j, for those who remember, it was 2 years ago, around this time, it was December, middle of December. Uh, the industry found out that there was this massive vulnerability in this product called Log4j.
Yeah.
Log4j, the FCC, one of those, I think it was
FCC.
FCC.
Yeah.
They said, uh, we mandate you, anyone who works with us, we mandate you to change all your Log4j up to put the new patch in because it's such a bad vulnerability. And it was everywhere. So it is the logging tool for basically all Java apps, and Java owns most software at this time. So don't accuse anyone. This was industry wide, right? So you could
Mhm.
see here it's the top 0.003 percentile of popular downloads that are
Yeah.
downloaded. So why does not every, why does so many apps use Log4j? Well, going back to that GitHub, there's the value, there's the pluses and minuses of GitHub. So
Yeah.
uh, it allows us to use Legos to connect software development now is a very more is more Lego oriented. Like I'm going to piece this over here, I'm going to piece this over here. Um, and as we look at these things, and this is for all of us to acknowledge, so Log4j was managed by 16 unpaid volunteers. So here's this massive issue that was run by these 16. Now, why do we know 16? Again, GitHub, we know exactly who has been adding things to get to that. But this is the value of us making sure that we're monitoring these things. Uh, so, uh, with that, we saw some adversaries actually utilizing this. Conti was the first one, and then some nation states came in and started utilizing it. And then DreadX was used to steal online banking info from Log4j. So, this is a very important thing for us to work on, and we're all working on it as an industry. We have the tools to start building towards it. We have a lot of abilities. You and I, we can manage our domains. We have to also do a good job with that GitHub stuff as well, like all
Right.
managing those things as well. This is where, so where is the value? What do we do for this? So this is where the CVEs, which manage all of these evaluations, come into play. This is where Iron Bank, where every single container that is placed into Iron Bank has to be evaluated for what happened to Log4j, for what happened to every other CVE that's ever existed. You can't get on Iron Bank until they've evaluated that you have patched everything correctly, that everything we know from an industry is on your software, that you've done the requirements. There are a lot of regulations. I was just talking to my developers this week about a regulation of HTTPS. So
Mhm.
to connect, there are certain industries that require everything to use encryption between their systems as opposed to unencrypted. And we were trying to convince our developers, hey, we have a way that it's still going to be secure, but we want to remove HTTPS. We want to do it secure in another way. And they're like, there are so many regulations. I am not going to allow that to happen. Like, we're going to have to go through so many checks and balances to make sure that that's going to be acceptable.
Yeah.
We need to do that. That's so important to us. And so, like, those checks and balances are important, and we need to continue keeping to grow those and improve those. But that's the value. That's the value of the software supply chain that we can do today with the
Right.
GitHub and all of these regulations that exist.
Yeah. No, it's pushing us forward. And it's good that we have these. We've learned a lot. Log4j, it's not unlike, and of course, that was you mentioned Java, which came from Sun, now Oracle, but it's similar to early on, it was mainly Microsoft was the target. It's like anything else in the network realm, we kind of focus, we talk about attack surface, right? And so these are the big, the big things to shoot at if you're trying to do something. Because it's everywhere, as your slide showed. It's everywhere, and they know it's going to take a while for people to get off that dependency. So we're moving a lot faster now, which is great.
Yeah. Moving on to I'm going to read this quote. So he doesn't say the N word, the nuclear word in this, but we're assuming nuclear is being talked about. So this is Brigadier General Randy Oakland. He was at Alamo ACE. As we posture and strengthen the joint forces for today's global strategic competition, at Joint Base San Antonio, we also recognize the important role that energy plays in ensuring mission readiness, operational flexibility, and long-term sustainability. This means reducing the base's dependence on external sources of power. The base also needs robust power systems that are capable of withstanding disruption and operating during emergency energy challenges. So, to finish a quote here, we envision a future that optimizes cost and provides resilience, cleaner sources of energy by balancing the objectives of energy projects and placing an increased focus on meeting multiple objectives within single projects. Yeah, going back to, they're going to talk about it, it's probably because there's a technology. We're going to start speculating. What do you think he's talking about here?
Wow, Nathan.
I don't know if you think it, but I do. I'll say it if you need me to.
Well, sure. I mean, the advancement in nuclear to be small modular, right? It addresses so many factors that we're facing going forward. I live in an area where we have over 30 million square feet of data center space, right? And growing, right? So, I've seen the advancements with, adding natural gas supply, because it's cleaner, right? Early on, they didn't care that some of it was coal. And then, I think it's good we're making advancements in these new areas where you can drop a reactor next to something that they know is going to require a lot of power. And I think we've got that technology pretty well, worked out. In fact, our military has been using that, the Navy specifically within our ships and subs. So, we've known how to do this for a while. It sort of makes logical sense that you could do that on a base, because we know AI is going to require, several factors, several orders of magnitude more power. So it addresses that requirement while, reducing the dependency on the community around the base itself, and it increases security in a lot of respects. So I think we'll see a lot of that. I think we may even see other types of power beyond that, but we know that that technology exists. So he probably did not want to use the word nuclear for a lot of reasons. So
Yeah, Larry Ellison from Oracle, he said his quote, I believe it was him, but this is a quote. It's from a CEO like that in the cloud world. About a month or two ago, he said, "I know sounds crazy. This sounds crazy, and I can't believe I'm actually going to say this, but we're going to start powering our data centers with mini nuclear reactors." I mean, yeah, it sounds crazy.
yeah, I
It's
mean, yeah,
you look at the industry that I was reading up on this, and I'm not a nuclear engineer. I don't know. I can only tell you what I'm reading. I don't know if it's accurate or not, right? But the companies that are selling these things are saying that it is safer because it's fission, so that the ability to explode doesn't exist. It would simply be a chemical that would dissipate into the air. You know, it affect people, but not nearly to the level. It's uh, it's safer from terrorist attacks because it's underground oftentimes, so that you can keep it below the attack
right.
surface. It's modular, so it's cheaper. You don't have to build a unique one for every single one. You just put it on a truck and send it somewhere.
That's right.
And you can size it and you can add multiple of them in a place to give them their own independence of power. So kind of crazy, but sounds cool.
Yeah, no, I mean it is cool, and fission obviously does not have the type of spent fuel fusion has, and so that's a big factor. There's another parallel, perhaps, that I think we can draw, which is, if you're tracking again AI and NVIDIA, our now most valuable company on the planet, at $3.4 trillion or something. Liquid cooling in these data centers is a trend. Well, likewise with this power source, right? So,
Interesting.
there's a lot of things that will have to be managed, water, and that supply will have to be managed. But on the other hand, I think we now have, people, visionaries, and the technical expertise to recognize it's not even just dual use that we talk about, but there are going to be many uses that'll play out. The base itself, is not going to ever run out of hot water. I can tell you that.
Yeah, he also talked about water, and I wonder how you'll get that water there. I'm thinking of, so I went to Guam about this time last year, and they were talking about their entire island. I mean, Guam is becoming very important, as we talked last time about Asia and their importance to how close they are to so many things over there, and so many Marines are being dropped, are being stationed there. The entire island lost power for like a week. And I could see having their own power source would drastically change a very critical place for American security. So,
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, we've made advancements to store power as well. When we think about today, we just think about the EVs and the cars we drive and things of that nature. But the innovation in one area, again, can be applied in other areas, right? So, one of my associates who I've worked with for a long time lives further out, I'll say in the country. And so he had a power outage last night and he's already got everything set up. It flipped over in half a second and he didn't lose power.
wow.
Was able to keep working on his computer. And I think that's really what we're looking for at the base level, right? Is they'll probably stay hooked to that community power, but these other things will be a factor, and they'll be able to run to them when needed or depend on them when needed.
Yeah. And we both agree we're speculating that's what he's talking about, but it's a fun topic nonetheless, especially in the tech world because it's happening in tech no matter what.
It exists, they should be considering it and then working
Yeah.
through the process.
So yeah, those were the main topics of Alamo Ace, kind of the more unique, interesting ones. Uh, Carla, do you have any questions about any of this to talk through?
We did get two questions. I'll pull one up right now. So the first one is, What challenges might the Air Force face in rapidly scaling the warrant officer program to meet the demand for specialized cyber expertise?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's a new program. They've built all of the processes around it. Um, I think they've done the right first step to keep the experts there. And talent management is a huge thing in the military. We talk about it from an Elastic perspective a lot, trying to connect all of the data they have. Basically, their goal is in 10 years from now, will we have the people we need? Have we trained the right people, and will we have enough of each type of person 10 years from now? Like, do we have enough people in tr the traffic the traffic control systems? Do we have enough people in the command and control areas that are moving up the ranks so that we will be ready 10 years from now? And I think this is the right move. The next question is, can they keep them? Can they m- make sure that they're growing as they hope that they'll be growing?
Yeah, no, those are good points. And I think, I go back to the fact that our military is a phenomenal training venue system. They have great systems, but I think also you can get the actual experience, the hands-on experience, pretty rapidly. And I think those two elements will be helpful in scaling this.
Yeah, what else? What's the other one, Carla?
Alrighty. The other one is how can organizations better prepare to respond to vulnerabilities like Log4j in the future?
Yeah, I think we, I, there's what we can control, and then there's what the industry can control. And there was this one person, when Log4j first came out, we talked about it a lot because it was a horrible situation. I felt very proud of our company and how we dealt with it. And uh, just making why that is we saw it, and within 4 hours, we gave the industry a way to know where their Log4j was. Like we went through that process, and so we presented that a lot. And this one person, I thought it was a very astute comment, said, "Why are we using these Log4js?" And like, why don't we build it on our own? And I think that we can't innovate as fast if we do that. So pr making sure that we have good ways to evaluate Log4j is I think the better answer. And for instance, Log4j used to have 16 volunteers monitoring it. You know that number's higher. I don't know what the number is, but you know that number's
Right.
higher. And it triggered all of us in the industry to say, before we throw in something, let's really evaluate if we have the right people really monitoring this little Lego piece that we're looking at. So I think it's monitoring the Lego piece is really what I'm getting at right there.
Thank you, Nathan. We still have one question
Okay.
and wrap up after that. So it's what role do you see automation playing in helping organizations create and manage SBOMs effectively?
I'll take that one, Frank, if you want me
Sure,
to.
sure.
Yeah, in general, automation is changing software coding. Anyone who codes knows this at this point. It is stupid. And I don't like my kids are in elementary school. They don't like the word stupid. They will not allow it to be used in the house. It is stupid to write code without AI these days because it is so nice and it's not perfect. You got to still check it and evaluate it. Um, but it's so nice to see that code all written out, like, hey, this is what I want to be done. And it says, okay, this is how you write that code out. Then you check it and look at it. So, how you do that in organizations. Now, a good organization who is allowing us, who accepts that code is built with AI, is going to add their guardrails to that code as well. Uh, and that's the key right there is a lot of the AI tools like the not the Gen AIs, but the AI tools that can be used by an enterprise have the ability to say, yes, you can write code Gen AI, code AI tool, but these are the expected guard rules. You got to prove to me, give me sources that what you just wrote came from a US source. Give me proof that, before you even give that to the coder, I want it tested to make sure there are no vulnerabilities in it. So use this vulnerability scan to test that code. Like things like that, building those guardrails, I think will add effective valuation to it. Have any other comments on that, Frank?
No, I think you nailed it really, really with SBOMs. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think those are the things we want to talk about on Alamo Ace. Great show. Um,
Yes,
any other comments from you, Frank, or I'll give it back to you, Carla?
thank you so much, Nathan and Frank, and thank you everyone for attending. The webinar is being recorded and again will be sent to you along with Nathan and Frank's contact information in case you have any additional questions for them or want to dig into any specific topics. And please do fill out the survey at the end. We appreciate your participation. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks, Nathan.